So I have a couple of things to present, and we're going to talk. So I'm very concerned about creating sustainable organizations. I'm going to tell you why I think that's vitally important. But the short answer is that organizations still require human beings to create value for their customers. And those human beings are valuable, they're important, they're not disposable. I dislike the term human capital because it suggests that people are like machines, you can just swap them in and out. People are complicated and beautiful and wonderful and creative and frustrating. That's what the human experience is, and that's where leading an organization, organizing the humans to create value for others, really requires an understanding of that human creature from a biological perspective. And that's what I've done over the last 25 years or so. So let me show you what we've done. And at the end of my talk, a QR code for free software that anybody can use to measure their own thriving. And you'll get a sense of what you're doing that's most important to you. I have a new book out the last 6-7 weeks called Little Book of Happiness. Some of my talk is coming from that book. Other books you can find more information on things I'm speaking about as well. So if we're thinking about thriving for individuals, really there are 5 pillars that support thriving. And that is people who are fully engaged in life, who are talking to people, doing things, engaging with others, creating value for the world, for their families, for the people around them. So the first 3 are easy: diet, exercise, and sleep. We've known about this for a long time. There's lots of technologies that allow us to measure those, and they certainly are essential. I'm going to focus on the second or the last 2. First is having a rich social network, and the last one is having a sense of purpose and acting on it. So recent research out of Oxford University has shown that individuals with a rich social network are substantially happier. In fact, of all these pillars, having a rich social network is the most important to be happier. And it turns out that happier people also eat better and sleep better and are more likely to exercise and live longer. So if I'm looking for the leverage point to improve individual thriving, then I'm going to focus on that area that gives me the most bang for the buck. And that's really this notion of having a rich social network. Now, the word rich does not help me at all, right? Does that mean the number of contacts in my phone? Does it mean the number of people that I talk to every day? That's complicated. So we have solved that problem by measuring activity in the brain that allows individuals to objectively quantify how rich their social network is and to invest in improving those social connections. And we'll come back to purpose in a minute, but almost all, so think of purpose as your avocation. What do you love doing besides work, family? What gives you energy? What makes you feel like you're adding some value to the planet? Maybe it's fishing, maybe it's volunteering at your kid's school, becoming a great tennis player. Well, almost all those purpose activities involve other people, and therefore the technology we've developed to measure the quality of your social relationships also impacts your ability to get value neurologically from acting on your purpose. So these factors, as I said earlier, are not independent. So if we want to live longer, happier, and healthier lives, really leaning into our underlying true neuroanatomy as social creatures is essential. Human beings do not thrive when they are isolated or alone or lonely. We thrive in groups. It's very natural for us to take a bunch of human beings and put them in a business and give them some goals, and they'll work together. It's not natural for almost any other mammal species in particular. There are some exceptions, some insects like bees and ants that are genetically related will work really nicely in teams. Yes, some primates do it, but not nearly to the extent we have. And we have anatomically different brains that facilitate this. So takeaway number 1, it's not at all counter to our biology to put people in an organization, give them an objective, and ask them to work on it as hundreds of thousands of years, and we'll continue to do it. Now, the problem is that if you look at data from Gallup, and I'll tell you why I'm skeptical of this, but consistently people say that they get burnout at work. By the way, also, people get burnout at home, right? As much as you love your family, you have friction with them. So just like we have friction with our families, we'll have friction when we put people at work. Doesn't mean we don't want to work in groups, we don't want to be with other people, but there's to be natural frictions because someone's has tight stress, or they're tired, or they're just having a bad day, or they didn't sleep well last night. So all those inhibit our ability to be good social creatures, to be good colleagues. And so if people are getting burnt out um, by some measure, and it is individuals who create value for an organization, then we should be concerned about that. In fact, we should be more concerned because we look at the sort of extension of being burnt out, which is having mental health disorders, and we see a huge increase in those mental health disorders around the world. In particular, in younger generations, we see a higher incidence of mental health disorders. And so individuals who suffer from mental health disorders in the US lose about an average of 12 days of work. Those who have good mental health are only out sick about 3 days. And so, again, you can quantify not only the human toll, the suffering that people go through with mental health disorders, but the loss of productivity and income. And so, again, I'm into sustainability. I want to create sustainable organizations and organize the humans so they are sustainable, and mental health disorders work against that. So we've got to really think proactively about how to avoid mental health disorders. As I said earlier, mental health or emotional, what I call emotional fitness, whether you're resilient and able to handle eat properly and exercise. And we see this high incidence of obesity. This is data from the US, but you can extend this throughout the wealthy countries, but also middle-income countries are getting fatter and fatter. My neighbor to the south, Mexico, has an increasingly acute obesity problem. Mexico is a middle-income country, but they're getting fatter and fatter for a whole variety of reasons. And so, again, when you gain weight, you tend not to sleep as well. You have less incentive to exercise, and people start getting depressive symptoms when they're overweight. So, all this is feeding back on itself. So we've got to get ahead of this curve. Finally, the other factor that's influencing this as an acute demand for organizations to create sustainable workforces is the lack of babies. So this is data from the US. The US went below replacement fertility around 1990. In Europe, it is much, much worse, as you know. Off the top of my head, Germany went below replacement fertility in 1975. 1975. So we're not making more employees at a fast enough rate. Immigration's gotten very complicated everywhere in the world. So we've tried importing people who can work. And at least for now, that immigration flow is going to be greatly reduced. And the people who are working are getting more burnt out. So we have this triple whammy that says, at least in my perspective, we better really take care of and nurture individuals who are working because they are extraordinarily valuable. Many people have said this, but it's true. The war for talent is over. Talent has won. So let's empower those talented individuals who create value with the tools they need to sustain their emotional health, or they will quit, drop out of the labor force, or stop working for you. At the same time, we're seeing this increase in disengagement socially, increase in loneliness, a lack of companionship. Part of this comes from not being in the office. So we found that people have a greater ability to thrive neurologically when they're around other people. And at least in the US, we've had a big push now by some of the major tech companies to return to the office 5 days a week. At least 3, and they recommend 5 or require 5. Amazon, Google, you can find this in the news. So, yeah, it's on the other hand, at work, you have that social connection. You have those random collisions. You have the chit-chat about your weekend or whatever you're doing that's actually creating a sustainable workforce because it facilitates those social connections. Even if they are weaker connections with our colleagues, than we have with our friends or family, they're still valuable connections, right? Having more connections that are weaker means that some of those connections become strong, and they are our social support system that allows us to avoid things like burnout and sometimes mental health disorders. And it turns out that people who are lonely are less productive at work. So again, if you needed a reason to continue to listen to the rest of my talk to find the solutions, here's another one of that, and to really think about how to create inspiring workplaces. I was in San Francisco recently and saw this sign on the street: "Stop hiring humans." So that's one solution. Let's just get rid of the humans. Well, there's a lot of tasks for which we can't depend on AI to do, and until our robot overlords take over and put us in the zoo somewhere, it's still going to be humans that are going to take over, that are still going to do most of these jobs. And so instead of stopping hiring humans, why don't we give humans the ability to really thrive long term? So, as I mentioned on the top of my talk, my group has created technologies that allow us to measure brain activity at scale. And using this, we've now measured over 50,000 brain observations while people work, while they go to the movies, while they have fun with their friends. And my work is in behavioral neuroscience. So these technologies were designed to accurately predict behavior, not to predict feelings. In fact, I don't even believe feelings are a thing, because they're your self-report of your guess at what your brain's doing. And the brain is not designed to reveal its unconscious emotional responses with any fidelity, just like your liver or your heart are not designed to do that. So just because your brain creates language doesn't mean you have any insight into what your brain's doing. My group has been able to identify and publish in the scientific literature what it means to really thrive from a social emotional perspective, and create tools to allow people to do that. So in this 25 years of research, funded by many agencies, the U.S. government, and millions of dollars of work, we identified how the brain values social emotional experiences. This is a network in the brain I've called immersion. You can see a part of that in the image I've got on the screen. And this captures two core components. One's attentional. If I'm going to have a valuable experience, I've got to be present. If I'm not present, then if I'm distracted doing something else, this is not a great experience. And that experience has got to generate emotional resonance. It's got to be valuable, so value. So that valuation mechanism is going to lead us into how much value do you need to truly thrive. And you can see there's going to be a simple answer. All simple answers come from lots of hard research, but there's going to be a simple answer to that question with some technology. And so when we see people getting these peak immersion experiences, immersion with a capital I, this is a 1 second frequency combination of neuroelectrical signals that we can measure with technology. These peak immersion moments are extraordinarily valuable. The brain is investing a lot for that organism. And so by using this information and all these data on people's behaviors, we've been able to create technology that allows us to convolve multiple signals from the brain and actually grab these from the cranial nerve. It's like the brain's output file. So you don't want to walk around wearing a weird helmet, or at least most of us don't want to. Marta does, but she's odd. But everybody else would like to not have to wear a weird helmet and still understand what's most valuable to my brain. What do I do in order to get sufficient social and emotional value to truly thrive? So in doing these years of research, we're able to take this technology and get these cranial nerve signals from smartwatches and fitness wearables. This will shock you, but your brain's connected to a body and they talk to each other. And the cranial nerves are one of the key pathways in which the brain talks to the body. And by tapping into that activity with a smartwatch, we can then identify how much of this social emotional experience your brain needs to really thrive. And the answer is 6. So it turns out in our published research that if you have 6 well-defined peak immersion We call these key moments a day that you're truly thriving. You're engaged in life. You're doing things. You're energetic. You have positive mood. You're just doing fabulous in life. If you have 4, you have depressive symptoms. You have low energy and low mood. And so now we've created technology which is free that anyone can use that gives you a very simple goal. I think of this as steps for the 21st century, right? Getting 10,000 steps with a nice physical performance goal in the olden days, but again, the leverage point here to improve thriving and to create sustainable organizations is emotional fitness. So just like you can build up your physical fitness, you can build up your emotional fitness, and the goal is to get 6 of these high value moments per day. And the technology runs in the background, no weird questions, collecting this data from your brain every second, and it will identify using your calendar and your location what those peak immersion moments are that are most valuable to you, so you can lean into them and do more of that so that you really thrive. So the app is called Six, of course. It's free in the app and the Google Play stores. It's really the missing metric to help individuals thrive, and as a result, help organizations sustain long-term survival and profitability. So if that's the case, then we've got to have technology to measure this. And you can see in this screenshot, these little bubbles. I'm going to get 6 of these bubbles a day, and it'll tell me what I was doing when I got one of those bubbles. Oh, meeting with Bob, those are always great meetings. I get a key moment, so I should see Bob more often. And meeting with Susan, I never get a key moment meeting with Susan. And so maybe I'll just, substitute more Bob for less Susan if I can. And some of these key moments you'll have by yourself. So I write almost every day. That's part of my job as a researcher and a communicator. And if I'm deep in writing, I'll often get a key moment. It's really valuable to me. I enjoy writing. I like the process of writing. But also, most of those key moments for most people will come with other people, right? So if I'm sharing my writing with someone or giving a talk or giving a webinar like this, I'll tend to get key moments because it's social. And again, we're social creatures. We need that. So for individuals, again, we're device agnostic. Basically, any device that collects a time series on your heart rate. So we don't use heart rate or heart rate variability. Those don't predict behavior. I'm a behavior guy. Controlling the heart into what the brain is saying in terms of the value you're getting from the experience. So the neurochemicals that drive immersion, primarily dopamine and oxytocin, subtly affect the rhythms of heart, these sort of acceleration, deceleration. So if I can get a time series on your heart, I can transform that into neurologic immersion. We did this in published research by using pharmaceuticals, so we can trace out these pathways from the brain to the cranial nerves to the heart by manipulating dopamine and oxytocin, which we've done. So having a simple goal for emotional fitness is a great employee benefit. It's a way to keep that workforce working by giving everybody the tools to measure and manage their own emotional fitness privately. So what makes me happy or Marta happy will be different things. It's not really happy is valuable, right? So many of these peak immersion experiences are happy times, but some are not. Some are hard. Writing's hard. Things are really important to thrive, right? If physiologic stress was bad for you, you would never go to the gym. You'd never exercise. But we do that because we're building up our physical fitness. And we do the same thing for emotional fitness. We've got to actually challenge ourselves. We've got to be in new situations. And we see this in the data. If you do the same thing over and over and over, your emotional fitness will begin to degrade. But if you are taking on new activities, meeting new people, doing new things, then you'll have a greater opportunity to develop your emotional fitness and sustain that resilience so that you can thrive long term. The app 6 also allows you to share the number of key moments you're having with trusted friends or colleagues. So if I can see my friend Connor here on the screen, there's no key moments. In the app, I can send him an emoji, a thumbs up, a heart. I could call him up or stop by his desk. Hey, buddy, you doing all right? You shared your data with me. Looks like you're not having a good day. Let's grab a coffee. Let's chat. And so this is the way we begin to avoid mental health crises, by being proactive and having a measurement and a neutral language to discuss emotional fitness. So people should be on this emotional fitness journey towards good emotional health together. We can support each other. Now, everyone has a down day once in a while, but if I see that Connor has had no key moments or one key moment last week, he probably needs some outreach, right? And we found, for example, if you're ill, if you have COVID, you're not going to get key moments. First of all, you're isolating, you don't feel good. So it could be I call up Connor, hey, dude, you're not doing so well this week. He said, yeah, I got the virus. I'm not doing great. I'm like, okay, well, can I send you over some soup? You need something from me? I can stop by, put a mask on, right? Even that is so important to emotional health. But maybe he just says, I've just been down the last 5 days. I'm like, all right, you're a friend. Let's go out. Let's grab a beer. Let's go hang out, right? So this is a fun way to help others develop their emotional fitness. And then, of course, there's some gamification in there. So you level up and you'll see how your emotional fitness is growing. When we look at individuals at work who have strong social case, less chronic stress, they have about 100% more energy at work than people who are not thriving. They take fewer sick days, as I mentioned earlier. They enjoy their jobs more, much higher job retention, and they're more satisfied with their lives outside of work. So we actually find that the highest day for people to thrive is Sunday. So the traditional day of rest and connection, in most of this data we find, weekends are that great connection and recovery time. People are really thriving on the weekends and generally doing okay during the week. So that's okay too, right? The week may be busy. I have a lot to do. So here's the QR code. As I said, it's free. You can try it yourself. There's a premium version that allows you to have more functionality. But there's no reason not to measure and manage your own emotional fitness so that you can live a longer, happier, and healthier life. And from a workplace perspective, this is really an important employee benefit so that individuals are empowered themselves to be sustainable as human beings and also as employees. I will stop there. And I picked on Marta just because I knew your name. So
that's absolutely fine. I don't mind at all. Lovely to be mentioned in the talk, so that's all good. Well, first of all, thanks so much for sharing. First of all, about a very serious and important issues that are affecting us right now. There are some interesting times to be living in. We're moving forward and taking us on the ride. So I think I'll be definitely checking out your app straight after this talk, because that sounds really fascinating of what sort of insights you can get from that. I suppose what's kind of really dawned on me as you were talking is a couple of things. It was the thriving, being around a social network, burnout at work. So it's kind of like we want to. Well, I mean, lots of employers are bringing their workforce back to the office. A lot of them kind of doing the hybrid model. What's your take on this? It's like, I'm not saying that you have to give a stance of whether we should be going back to the office or not, but obviously that most of our time we spend at work. And I wonder, what's your take on that in terms of the creating, the key moments and thriving, I suppose.
Yeah, the nice thing about being in the office is you have these other humans around you and you have a goal. And so oftentimes these high value key moments are goal directed. So if I'm just sitting on the weekend having a beer, watching some sports with my friends, fine, but it's not goal directed. So because these peak moments require a physiologic investment, like I got to do this thing, right? Then we tend to see people who, particularly those who are really satisfied in their jobs, getting a lot of key moments at work. So I can accelerate that or improve that by physically being around the people I'm working with. So just imagine, again, you can have these key moments by yourself. I live in a hilly area by the beach, and if I walk up to the hill tomorrow morning, watch the sunrise by myself, could be a key moment. But Marta, if you and I did it together and we're like, oh my gosh, beautiful sunrise, it's going to be much more valuable, right? So the same thing happens at work. So we're seeing in the U.S. at least is most companies requiring minimum 3 days a week at the office. Those tend to be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, not surprisingly. But increasingly, we're seeing leaders coming in 5 days a week and sort of setting the pace. And so I think from a leadership perspective, if you are in the office as a leader 5 days a week, your team kind of gets the notion, right? People are showing up. I'm fine with hot desking and having this open space. I think that's also good. We've published research on office design, and actually, open offices are better for thriving than are being in a cubicle because we didn't evolve to be in little isolated booths. So again, you can have open office space and have people come in and out, and people are traveling. I think that's also a good design. But yeah, I hate to force employees to do anything because it removes their sense of agency or what we call locus of control. On the other hand, it's like your mom telling you eat your vegetables, right? Sometimes you don't really want to do it, but you know it's good for you, and you need a leader to guide you towards doing that.
Yeah, and I suppose the key insights from the app could actually tell you that whether you are, being lonely, or when you're working from home and you're not getting those key kind of moments, that could be the telling sign that you're actually not spending enough time around people. So maybe today is the office day, and you get a bit of that as well. So that's
By the way, there's no difference before introverts and extroverts, which is a question I get a lot. I'm an introvert and I work at home a couple of days a week. But when I go into the lab, I'm having so much fun. They're my graduate students and my people, and I see that in the app all the time. So introverts need as much social interaction as extroverts.
I think I agree. The nice dose of balance there is always a good way to go. I'm also an introvert, but I like to say extroverted introvert. So
Yeah.
depends on the occasion.
We can turn it on and off. Yeah, that's right. You have to take a nap after talking to me this much, but yeah, that's fine.
I'll be all energized for my weekend after this talk. The last question for me is kind of like around the employers. What else? What could employers do to empower individuals, employees to be more emotionally fit? Because like we talked about, we're talking about struggle with attention, focus, kind of distraction, all those things. Is there anything that employers can do to kind of help individuals be more emotionally fit? Because I suppose that's...
We could do a whole half an hour on that easily. Part of that is we are social creatures and we follow leaders. So if that leader is emotionally fit, then it encourages the employees to do that. So we've seen a number of things in the U.S. that have been successful. One of those is called the Tight 40. So that means when you're at work, you're on, you're doing stuff. But I want that parking lot empty at 6 p.m. Go home. Go exercise, go have a meal, go see your friends or family. And so I used to work in consulting, and my boss would never leave before 8 p.m. And they're like, oh, you can't leave early. The boss is still here. I'm like, my work is done. I'm efficient. I'm not goofing around looking at Facebook or shopping online. I got my work done. I'm going home. I'm going to go to the gym. And so, I only worked there a year because whatever, I didn't play the political game. But I think if you're that boss, I think it's really important. The second is, I think, empowering individuals to have this conversation. So again, from that burnout perspective, for most employers or leaders, we're not seeing that people are are quitting because they don't like the work. They're generally quitting because they don't like the people. Right? That's the number one reason people quit their jobs, not for money. And so create an environment that is psychologically safe. And the app actually has a measure of psychological safety in there, physiologic measure. Create this a healthy environment and have a good balance. So that could be Wi-Fi and couches. It could be a cafe. It could be Pizza Fridays, right? Think of facilitating social connection and making it fun and easy for people to build those relationships. And as I said, there's always friction with people together, but when we have stronger relationships, better thriving, it's like a lubricant. Those frictions are reduced.
That's great, and I love that you've mentioned about the leadership kind of taking the stance and kind of leading the change, if it needs to happen, because that really ties with our previous sessions we had this week. We talked about leadership and self-leadership, and how leaders really should, kind of lead the way to kind of show up for their employees as well and help with that. So, well, thank you so much. This was really, really insightful, and it was fascinating to hear more about the neuroscience of our brains and how that affects us on a daily basis. So I'm really grateful for your time and joining us today. And this session will be also available on demand. So please, if people couldn't join us live today, please check out the session on demand as well. Or if you want to recap your favorite bits. Thank you so much again. Thank you.